And if we see that relationship as one working together, then the child wins.
Absolutely.
And as a parent, we feel supported.
Yep.
And, the teachers feel like that they are doing what they're trained to do.
Mm-hmm. Hello and welcome to 98.5's Table Talk. I am Dan and I am very excited to be here with teacher and Vice Principal of Rehoboth Christian College, Craig Hunter. Welcome, Craig. How are you?
I am good, thanks, Dan.
Good. I'm very excited you're here. What are you bringing to the table?
Well, I think today we're going to chat about working with teachers at schools and what does it look like? How do we have a cooperative relationship as parents in a challenging world, and how do we approach teachers, relate to teachers, and work with them for our kids?
Amazing. Okay, so let's get straight into it. What does an actual cooperative parent-teacher relationship actually look like?
I think the key word is partnership.
Yep.
And I think that when I get on the same page with parents, they want the best for their kid, and so do we as teachers. And so if we see that that's the goal, it makes life easier. I think the challenge is in our world, we've become a consuming culture.
Yeah, very
You've
much
got loyalty cards. We've got, I've paid for this product and I deserve this. And so we've noticed a shift to more of a consuming culture with our parents. So this is the product, which is the education and my child, and I have certain expectations, and you are part of that product and helping them. And so it's a bit of a shift, and it makes it tough sometimes as a teacher to deal with that kind of consumer style of parenting rather than partnering. And it's certainly been a challenge in terms of a traditional idea of a teacher's in loco parentis. I'm there to look after your child. When you're not there, we work together for your child. So cooperation looks like partnership. It looks like working together. So that tone is very different to some of the things that we will chat about that can be very challenging for teachers and exhausting. And it is their number one thing. So research says that the number one, especially for early teachers, the thing that scares them the most, parents.
Absolutely. Well, fresh out of uni, dealing with parents would be very scary.
Well, I think about times I've been to parent-teacher interviews and I'm working with a new teacher and they're like, can you do the talking? And I'll just watch. I'm really scared. I'm like, they're just parents. But I realize I'm a parent, and it is tough because they can be quite intimidating and confronting, and it is a challenge for new teachers especially.
Absolutely. Okay, so from a teacher's perspective, you being a teacher, what are some of the biggest issues you face in dealing with some parents? Some parents, because not all parents, some parents.
Yeah, I mean, one of the crazy things is the research recently done by the Australian Catholic University found that 83% of teachers have experienced bullying.
Oh, wow.
Some kind of bullying from parents.
83%.
Whether it's threat of physical violence, whether it's just intimidation from parents and unreported. What do you do? I'm going to report a parent for threatening. Obviously, more and more, like in Victoria, they've brought in laws to try and curtail that kind of stuff. My first year of teaching, I was in quite a challenging school, and one of the kids was swearing at me, swearing at other kids, threatening them. So I thought that's probably not really healthy in a classroom environment. So I sent them out, detention, and the next morning, her mum came with a friend, of course.
Oh, of course.
And to my classroom door, and basically said, "Do that again to my daughter, and we're going to take you out."
Two mums.
Yep, two mums.
And
I was like, "Whoa, this is not what I expected when I signed up for." And that's when I went to the principal and I said, "Can you just help this situation here?" And so that kind of stuff is an extreme example, but it happens. And I think that we think by intimidating others that somehow that's going to get a better reaction. So there's some of the challenges. I mean, the hardest part is when you've got an issue with your child in your class, how do we deal with that? And in the past, it'd be like, well, the teacher's always right. So you've obviously done something wrong. And so we work with the parents to discipline the child.
Right.
More and more, it's like, well, my child says they didn't do it. And my child never lies. And I think you're the one that's picking on my child.
Yeah.
And I think you've got the problem. And thankfully, it's not everyone, but it's kind of a culture shift where parents are kind of like taking the kid's side because I'm protecting them.
Of course.
But actually, if they're doing disruptive stuff, surely we want to see them change. We want to work on those character issues. And that's certainly a shift that has made teaching challenging, especially for newer teachers that like a surprise. I've had some parents go to me, well, like that my kid never lies. You must have made a mistake. You need to stop picking on my child. And so remember, teachers want the best for the kids.
Yeah.
And if we understand that, that tone is going to shift the whole way of how we deal with teachers as parents.
Absolutely. It's very interesting. It's so true. The whole, taking sides of the ads. It just makes the job even harder than it already is, trying to corral 30 kids and try to get a result out of it.
Yeah,
So,
and I think the thing is that we've got to remember that teachers are professionals. They've done a 4 or 5 year degree.
Yep.
Like your wife has.
Yep.
And we're not going to go into a physio or go into something and start telling them how to do their job. And really, you're the worst physio, and I'm actually going to shout at you, and I'm going to tell you that
beat you up.
Change that diagnosis you're giving me. What do you know about physio?
That's so funny.
And so teachers work hard, and they're working harder and harder. So when that day stops at 3:30, they're doing marking, they're doing interviews, they're sending emails, they're preparing lessons, they're marking lessons. It's a full-on job, and I think that when we make it hard for teachers, that's why so many are quitting.
Yeah.
That's why so there's a teacher crisis, because they're going, hey, and I think as parents, we've got to remember that. Hey, what can we do to encourage and help teachers in their job rather than make it hard for them? And we'll chat a bit later about how we deal with difficult situations, and that does happen. So let's acknowledge that. But let's start on a sense of respect and honour rather than I'm going to go in there and I'm going to show that teacher, I'm going to tell them off.
Yep, of course, and that whole partnership. So you touched on this a little bit before, but we see more and more teachers pressured with the responsibility of student performance, and they seem to be blamed by parents if their child is failing or underperforming. So how has that relationship between the teacher and the parents changed in the last 20 to 30 years?
Yeah, so I think there's a consumer parenting. We're a lot good at getting on an app, you know what I mean, and we can make quick decisions, and we want it fixed now.
Of course.
And I think one of the biggest shifts has been that parents are more busy.
Yeah.
Back 20, 30 years ago, mums often didn't work.
Yeah, right.
They were stay-at-home mums. They were available to chat, help their kids out, and be involved in the school community. We find now that parents are time poor. They're trying to juggle this and juggle that, and so they're working longer hours. And also they expect results. You know what I mean? I'm either paying fees or my kids are at your school and what are you doing? And I want this fixed straight away. And so what that does is it's a process. We don't just fix someone like that. We walk a journey with them as teachers, parents, partnering. And so that's been a shift. And it's harder to create that time and that space to work with parents for their children. And those relationships we used to have at the school, like a local school, we knew the teachers, we knew the families. That kind of stuff has been lost to some extent.
Yeah, right, for sure. Yeah, cool. Okay. Well, what about when it's the other way around, and you have a teacher that just doesn't have any interest in your child's struggles? What options do parents have in that kind of situation?
Yeah, and it is real. And I think there are teachers that are tired, jaded, probably not doing the job. They need to be held to account.
Yep.
I think the first thing is that we've got to choose our battles.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like the story we told off air that, my child got a C and they should have got a C+. Right, I'm going to go in there and tell that teacher off for doing that. And I think we've got to go, hang on a minute, that's part of their resilience and character building.
They're in kindergarten. It doesn't really
that's
matter,
right. And so, look, if that was grade 6, it's all over then.
Exactly.
This is I'm going to come in and show that teacher. I think there's always a process, and it sounds obvious, but the amount of times that parents go straight to the principal, I'm gonna write that email, and I'm gonna tell that principal and try and get that teacher fired.
Yeah,
I've heard parents say that. I'm like, hey, that's not helpful.
Yeah.
First step, it sounds like an obvious thing to say, but I'm gonna say it. Go to the teacher, make an appointment. Don't just send a stern email. Write a respectful email. Can I meet with you? Now, it's teacher's job to do that. Make an appointment. Express your concerns. Now. I would try and make some notes that are shared notes of that meeting, so you're quite clear of what you've said and what you've trying to resolve at that meeting, and then hold them to account.
Yeah, good.
In an appropriate, respectful way. Now, if that doesn't get resolved, you've got like a head of learning area, or then you can go to a principal and say, look, I've tried these steps and nothing's changed. Can you please help me? And I've often said to parents, if you've got 3 or 4 parents that often talk, I'd say go first to the teacher, but then if there's some other complaints we have, certainly in leadership, we go, hang on, there's a bit of a trend here. There's a few parents complaining. We need to really go in and start assessing and helping this teacher. What's going on? What are some of the concerns? Let's address it. And we, more and more in our age of compliance, have to do that. We want to do it, but we have to. We have to show that we are addressing valid concerns and that teachers are held to account. I know certainly not our school, we don't have that. We do have those situations we have to deal with, but I know sometimes it does get quite difficult and we have to go through a process where we actually get that teacher either retrained or move them into a different situation. But it is important because especially in primary school, when they've got one teacher, we want to make sure that teacher doesn't affect their learning or their attitude to learning. So
100%.
I think it's valid. But if I can ask, and I think the other challenge with that is that, we put it on Facebook, WhatsApp.
Oh,
We get a whole kind of what we call the Carpark Mafia.
Yep.
Just having a chat. I'm just sharing with you.
No,
just sharing with you. Like in the car
Just
park.
venting.
I'm just having a vent. Someone needs to understand, and then by the end of it, there's like 20 people venting, and
Absolutely.
there's this kind of the massive thing is developed against this teacher. So just remember the process. Remember they're professionals. They're doing their best. But there are times when we have to address concerns for sure.
Absolutely. So this slightly off topic. No, not off topic actually. Very on topic, but off the question list. So, do you see a difference? And it might not be, but do you see a difference between that kind of behaviour in, let's say, fancier private schools to more, public government schools? Do you reckon there's a difference in those kind of attitudes, or is it one and the same?
I think certainly in some of the high earth paying, I guess we'd call ourselves mid-range, and as a Christian school, it's had different ethos. So we work really hard on partnership from day one, and that's part of almost what you sign off on and what you understand. I know that some of the research in some of the higher end schools, where it's maybe 30,000 a year fees, they expect their pound of flesh. Like, I'm paying you, and I own you, and I expect results. And the teachers are under incredible pressure. I chat to them, and some of the research says that, and they are burning out because of that intense pressure they're feeling. I think government school is different, and I think it looks different, but I think it's the same idea that if we understand partnership, we're working together, we both want the best for our kids. I think that's the goal. But you're right, it has shifted, and our whole culture is shifting to a consumer culture. And so it affects how we even treat our own kids as parents.
Yeah, of course.
So it is a challenge. Like, I want my kid doing calisthenics or basketball. I want them in the A team, and I want them having at least the most game time. And I've coached basketball teams where I've had complaints that, I've been keeping track, and you put that kid on for 3 minutes more than my own child, and that's not fair. That's not fair at all. And I've spoken to other parents, and they also feel it's not fair. And that's the kind of that's some of the unhelpful things in our consumer parenting style.
Absolutely. And that kid might just not be very good at basketball.
Well, it's a bit hard to say that one, isn't it?
All right, so let's finish this off. Let's really nut down into what do you see are the the list of the actual benefits we see when teachers and parents are on the same page.
Yeah, you know what? It actually works well, and probably a best story I can think of is when Josiah was in about grade 3. He was struggling at school, getting headaches. Had to keep him in. I had a very strict teacher that was making him copy stuff down from the board, and he just was coming home exhausted. And then she goes, one day she goes, I'm just thinking, sometimes he gets headaches. Have you ever thought about getting his eyes checked?
Yeah, wow.
And being the good parent I am, I'm like, oh, no, I'm sure he's fine. He'll be all right. And so we take him to the optometrist, and sure enough, he's actually legally blind.
Wow, okay. That explains a lot.
That does explain. That's just, I don't know how he got into drumming, but there you go.
Well, the things are close. Not that far away.
So that's a good example of... and then we got his eyes tested, and all of a sudden, wow, he could see.
Yeah.
And he could start learning, a bit of catching up to do. But there was a teacher who cared about our child, recommended something, and then we saw the change. And when that works well, it can be like, have you thought about, my child needs this. Can you help them with that? And I get parents doing that, and I think it's great. My child's feeling a bit anxious, or there's this going on in this situation. And so then that partnership becomes a two-way way of raising a child, like a village idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so... I think that's really important. And remember that teachers are professionals, but they don't have everything, So we need a physio, we need a speechy, and here's some things that are going to help your child. Here's a diagnosis, or we'll get us some funding. And if we see that relationship as one working together, then the child wins.
Absolutely.
And as a parent, we feel supported. And, the teachers feel like that they are doing what they're trained to do.
For sure, because teachers are seeing one side of the child and the parents are seeing the other side of the child in different settings. So it makes sense to work together. Beautiful. Craig, as always, unbelievably inspirational and informative. So thank you so much to Craig Hunter from Rehoboth Christian College. Is that right? Yeah, that's right.
Well.
I nailed it. Hey, look at me. Didn't even have to read that. I nailed it. But yes, thank you so much for coming in today. And thank you for watching Table Talk for today. If you want more Table Talk, head along to YouTube, like and subscribe. And hey, why don't you share it on your social medias with your friends?